Welcome to episode number 164 of the Marine Layer podcast. We welcome on our friend Ben Ranieri, the creator of the Sea Level and host of the Sea Level podcast. We chat with him about some of the current Mariners trends, some upcoming offseason decisions, and how he got into the content game. We'll also take a deeper look at the Mariners' playoff chances and what exactly they have to do, to make the field in the next couple of weeks.
If you guys want to stay on top of all of our stuff, and hopefully you do, make sure to download all our podcast episodes if that's the case. If you're listening, make sure to, again, hit download, leave a 5-star review, rate and review, all that good stuff. It helps us out a ton if you do. If you're watching on YouTube, the best way you can support us, hit the subscribe button, like the video, drop a comment. Honestly, if you're only going to pick one, hit subscribe. But if you could do all three, awesome. On social media, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. One run from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game at 7-7.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network. Recording on Monday evening, September 16th, on an off day. I can't believe this subject has arisen here in the last couple of weeks. And with a couple of weeks to go here, Lyle, we're staring at the wild card standings with 2 weeks left. Mariners are 2 games out right now with the Twins losing today. 2 games.
Well, that's not possible. We declared the season over.
I know. Not fitting the narrative.
Oh, we're about to look real bad. And honestly, I hope we do. I genuinely hope we do. I want to be on Old Takes Exposed.
Like the Mariners will do their hype videos, right? Mm-hmm. Where they'll grab some media snippets about some things. Yeah, in 22, they got Trevor Plouffe declaring them dead on that video, right? I'm pretty sure they got him on there. Right. All right. So this year, Mariners, we've grown quite a bit since 2022. This podcast has, our platform has, our reach has. So
we didn't exist in 2022.
Well, we did in the year, just not during the season.
Yeah, toward the very, very end. Yeah.
Right, but we were minute and minuscule. We've grown quite a lot since then. So my one request to the people at the Mariners, if you make the playoffs, feel free to grab the snippet where we declare the season dead.
You know why I think you're more than fine putting that out there is because you basically just said, yeah. I had to lead the charge on that. It was me that hammered that thing home and said season's over, and you were just like, "Yep." So it's gonna be me that gets blasted.
I'm sure I've said it at some point in some episode. If they want to go find it, yours is just really easy to find right at the front of the episode.
Yeah, when Scott Service got fired.
Yeah. If they want to go find some other colorful things I said in that episode, they're more than welcome to. Like I think I've claimed that, like, why does this team underperform so much? Like, essentially, why do they suck? They can put that in there. I think that was in that episode, too.
Well,
or if they really want to rub it in, they can go find the part where it's like, all right, let's find everyone to blame for why a manager got fired this year and put it in that video, too, where it's like, look at all these things that suck about our team. Oh, wait, we made the playoffs.
Well, again, we're happy to be bulletin board material. You know why? Because if we're bulletin board material, that means the Seattle Mariners are in the postseason. So more than a necessary sacrifice, and a sacrifice we are more than willing to make. Just like hiking up Mount Everest for a certain right fielder that plays in Houston, which we will get back to come the offseason.
Can I request a mountain change, actually? So you keep saying Everest.
Okay, I mean, we said Mailbox Peak, but...
Yeah, we did say Mailbox Peak, but you just mentioned Everest. So if we're really maxing out, I say we go K2.
What's that, Kilimanjaro? Is that Kilimanjaro?
No, I think it's the second highest mountain in the world, and in fact, 10 times more dangerous. I think the stats are 1 of 6 people that go up don't come back down.
Well, I'm well versed in the exercise and activity of hiking. I'll survive.
Yeah. As long as you bring your PB&Js, I think you'll be fine.
Yeah. For those who haven't listened to the episode and didn't pick up on the sarcasm, I despise hiking. In fact, I don't hike ever. So that being said, I'll find a way to survive. And if I do, I'll be watching a lot of Kyle Tucker in that scenario.
Oh, I'm sure you will. But will the Mariners survive making it to the playoffs this year, Lyle? Will they do it? Like, seriously, okay, let's get on a little bit more of a serious note here. Fangraphs gives the Mariners right now an 8.8% chance at making the playoffs. As of last night, it might have adjusted a tiny bit, being 24 hours later since that number has been written down. But right now, they're 2 games out in the wild card. If you want to look at it in a little more real sense, the number in the standings says 2, but the Mariners are realistically 3 games out of the wild card right now due to not having a tiebreaker with the Twins and not having a tiebreaker with the Detroit Tigers, who are tied with them currently in the standings, and Detroit would move ahead of them today. If they're to win right now, as of recording, they're beating the Royals on the road.
Right.
Are you a believer right now? Like, I know we declared them dead, but like looking at it right now, like throw out past podcasts. When you're looking at this, do you see a path?
Well, those are 2 different questions. Am I a believer? Not quite. Do I think when the season ultimately ends, the Seattle Mariners will be penciled into the playoff field? Still not yet, personally. Is there a path? There's absolutely a path. And there's a feasible path now, too, especially when you have 3 against the Astros, especially when the Twins and the Tigers don't have the easiest schedules in the world. I know the numbers say differently about the Tigers, but I think when you break down these games, it's actually a little bit of a different story, which we can get to in a minute. So, yeah, there is a path. And the way the offense is currently playing, if it keeps up in the final 12 games and doesn't falter back to where it's been a lot of the season, if it keeps up, yeah, there is a path.
I don't like how the sequencing works out for the Mariners, though. Before we started recording, I voiced my concerns a tiny bit over the structure of the Mariners' final bit of the season. So not only are they playing a really good Yankees team this week, they will be getting ready for Game 2 when this episode comes out. But even though you are clearly better than the Texas Rangers this season, and you've shown that in the 3 series you've played against them, you do have to play them on the road in Texas, which is not ideal. Mariners, this last road trip, just won their first road series against a non-White Sox team in a long time. So that's a concern to start right there.
White Sox and A's, yeah.
White Sox and A's. But then, of course, you go to Houston, right, which is going to be tough because Houston's been the best team in baseball since you were 10 games up. They are tied for the best record in baseball at that point. Then you play the A's for the final 3 games of the year, which for these other teams, those final 3 games of the season really might not matter that much. The Astros, they won the series against the Mariners. Like, final 3 games at Cleveland, doesn't matter. Not really. Only for a seeding sense. Doesn't matter as it relates to the Mariners. The Twins, well, the Twins keep losing. They might get passed by the Tigers if the Mariners falter on the road. Therefore, their final 3 games against the Orioles would matter all that much. I'm jealous of the Tigers. They get the final 3 games of the season against the White Sox. I'm sure when we looked at our schedule, the Mariners' schedule at the beginning of the season, I'm like, wow, 3 games against the A's to finish the year? That works out, but not how the A's have been playing.
I still don't really know how the Tigers are doing this. I guess having Kerry Carpenter back has done everything for them, but it's not a very good team, right? Kerry Carpenter's gone off, and Riley Green's been really good, but I don't know how else they're doing this. They still don't have any pitching outside of Tarek Skubal and Flaherty.
Aren't very many good teams, period. Well, Flaherty also got traded.
It's just who did?
Flaherty?
Oh, did I? Yeah, you're right. Duh. Yes, he did. He is not on the team anymore. So what am I saying? I'm dumb. That's not new. Anyway, yeah, the Tigers have 2 bats. They have Kerry Carpenter and Riley Green. They have essentially 1 arm in Tarek Skubal. And then they have an okay bullpen.
And they still handled the Mariners without much issue.
I don't get it. So I don't get how they're winning all these games, but they are.
And they've played their way into playoff position. And the way their schedule sets up, so this week for the Tigers is not that easy. Like, they play 3 at the Royals. They're currently beating the Royals here on Monday. And then they play 2 more against the Royals. They have an off day, and then they go to Baltimore to play 3 games before returning home for 6 in a row to end the season against the Rays and the White Sox. So it's tough at first. The Rays are a fine team in the middle, and then the White Sox are the worst team of all time at the end, certainly helps offset. And if you go check Tankathon really likes how the Tigers' schedule sets up to end the season. So that kind of works out. Like, the schedules aren't impossible for how it looks for the Mariners when it's like looking at the Twins and the Tigers. Like, if you're going to make ground on the Tigers, I think it's going to be this week for the Mariners. I think the Mariners are going to need to play extremely well at home against the Yankees, which, if I'm going to guess right now, the Mariners are losing the series. But who knows? You know, they played a lot better in the last week. And then you have to go play on the road at Texas. Like, that's when the ground is going to need to be made up on the Tigers, who own the tiebreaker over you. Therefore, you're going to need to finish a game better than them. The Twins have been playing so bad that the Mariners can play well each of the next 2 weeks, and I think the Twins might take care of themselves based on how they're playing. They might go a game below the Mariners just based on the fact they're not playing very well.
So I will say, even though Tankathon favors the Tigers' schedule, I really don't think the Rays are pushovers. I know by the numbers that they are, but they have real pitching, a bullpen. They can win some of those games.
You know, I thought about it a little more, Lyle. I think the White Sox really skew that.
Yeah, like no shit, Sherlock.
I think they hold most of the weight there.
Dude, what is this team doing? Like, they've won, 35 games, and now they're going to cut payroll?
And they're not going to sign free agents.
Like,
he said that on the broadcast while watching the game. Well, people were watching the game. It's like, what? You guys are almost 100 games under 500.
Like, they are unreal. I really didn't think anybody could surpass the John Fisher A's, but wow, they're really making their case.
So is that a hot take to say, Lyle, based on how the White Sox are right now in their current ownership group? Is Michael Jordan actually the worst thing to ever happen to the city of Chicago?
He doesn't own the White Sox. Duh, because of Jerry Reinsdorf.
Mr. Jerry Reinsdorf, who does own the White Sox and happens to own the Chicago Bulls, who would be a pretty irrelevant franchise if not for number 23.
But billionaires like that don't care. Would he have ever left his ownership role, even without Michael Jordan?
No, but I don't know if his team would be as valuable. It would be pretty valuable, but maybe not as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe the value would have come later. But
yeah.
Anyway, food for thought.
Yeah, Mariners. Yeah, I like the Mariners have more games to make up on the Twins, obviously, than they do on the Tigers. So they don't have to surpass the Tigers by that much. You just have to do it by a game or two. You're one game behind the Tigers right now, right?
If the Tigers win, you'll be a half game behind them.
Half game. You mean if they lose?
Well, the Mariners don't play on Monday today.
Right.
Tigers are playing right now, so if they win, they'll be a half game ahead because they're tied in the standings.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. So, in that case, yeah, like it's not like the Mariners have to catch all this ground on the Tigers. They just have to outplay them, like you said, by one game the rest of the way. And I don't think the Tigers are just going to have a cakewalk outside of those final 3 games of the year. Yes, you've got to make up ground before those final 3 games because you have to assume the Tigers are sweeping that series. So you've got to make up the ground before then, but I think they can.
And this also, none of this is possible without the Mariners winning every single series the rest of the season.
Right.
Like, let's just set it bare minimum. The Mariners need to win 2 of 3 in 2 of these series and sweep the other 2 series of the 4 remaining. 2 sweeps, 2 of 3s to make it. You want to be in the field. That's what it's going to take.
In other words, like we said on the live stream on Sunday, you need to be 10-2 in these final 12. You can't go 6-6. You can't even go 8-4. You've got to be 10-2.
Mm-hmm. Now, which are those series? I mean, I think you'd like to beat the Astros, but most likely the Astros are going to beat you at least once in Houston. And I would say most likely the Yankees will beat you 1 of 3 this week. Can you sweep the Rangers on the road and the A's at home? Yes, you can do that. So it's not like we're asking something that is unrealistic. Have the Mariners really done something like this year? No, not enough. Because that's why they're in the position they are right now. But if they want to make it, that's what they're going to have to do. Luckily for them, they have the pitching to do it. And the way the offense is swinging, they should absolutely be able to do this if they're willing to gear it up for this final stretch.
So I jumped the gun a little bit on Sunday because I thought when I saw the Mariners reslotted their rotation, I thought that the 3 in the Yankee series would be the 3 in the Astro series. That's obviously not right because you don't have 6 starters in your rotation. So you have Wu, Miller, and Logan going in this series against the Yankees. So you can't slot it out perfectly, but I think if I have this right, it should be in some order or another, Brian Wu, Bryce Miller, George Kirby in the Astros series. And with the off day on that Monday, I think you can find a way to work that in. I think. Does that sound right?
Close enough.
We'll see how we don't know exactly how it's going to shake out by the time they get to Houston, but you'd have to imagine they are planning to use just about the best rotation possible for that.
Based on our discourse of this rotation, especially over the second half of the season, I think you have your 4 guys you're most confident in pitching in Houston right now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Especially with Kirby's last start where he was pretty darn good on Sunday.
He was really good.
You would have to feel pretty confident about that and the other 3 guys in that rotation. It stinks the Mariners don't have Luis Castillo here for the stretch run. The Mariners will protect Emerson Hancock a little bit because he's going to start in that Texas series, right? So, sort of just manage out who's pitching well in your rotation and where.
Yeah. And works. Luis may be back for that final week. He may be back to make a start against the A's. We'll see.
Let's jump into the division part of this.
Okay.
So right now, the Mariners are 4.5 games back of the Astros. They don't play? Oh, they do play today. What, have they started yet? It is 1-0 Padres in the bottom of the second inning. So as of right now, we're going to play this as the standings currently are with the Mariners 4.5 games back of the Houston Astros. The Astros to finish the season 3 at San Diego starting today on Monday, 4 versus the Angels, 3 versus the Mariners, and then 3 at the Guardians. Not an easy stretch. They get 4 cupcakes in the middle, but outside of that, they play 3 close to playoff teams to finish out this season. And we said our goal for the Mariners is for them to be down 3 games by the time plane touches down in Houston. So with a sweep, you would be in first place in the division in Houston. So how do they get there at this point? Because that Angels series really throws a wrench in the plans for that. You have to make up a game and a half with them playing essentially a rollover team, which when we talk about the Twins being the 3rd worst team in baseball since the middle of August, Angels have been the 2nd worst team.
Who's been the worst? Do you have that or no? Oh, duh. What am I saying? Dumb question, man. I've had a lot of dumb.
It's been a long day, Lyle. How long have you been awake now? Was it 15 hours? Do I have that right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I've had a lot of dumb mess ups on this podcast. Oh well, it's not unknown to happen, obviously. So yeah, the White Sox have been the worst. If anybody didn't pick up on that, I would say yes. It throws a wrench into the plans because the Angels, you expect to lose every game they play against the Astros. It's just how it is. Now, here's my question about how do they get there. Before we even answer the how do they get there, I do wonder this. Is it easier to get into the playoffs for the Mariners via a wild card spot or through the division? And let me lay out both sides to it, and then you can answer. You would think it would actually be easier in the division despite being back by less games because you directly play the team you have to catch and you can take care of a lot of your own business and you have the tiebreaker. So you would think, oh, that's still more plausible than being 2 back of the wild card right now, which is essentially 3 back, as we know, because you do not have the tiebreaker over the Twins. But the Twins have played so poorly with what's probably a tougher schedule than the Astros, I start to wonder if it's the wild card.
I think it's the wild card solely for the fact the Astros are significantly better than the Twins and the Tigers. Therefore, the odds of them messing up is much worse. Like the Mariners will need teams to mess up for them to make the playoffs.
Right.
That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
The Astros haven't messed up for 3 months. They've been great. So, unfortunately, that's just not something the Mariners can bank on. If you map it out, Mariners at worst this week, if they're going to be 3 games back of the Astros, need to be 5-1 this week. against the Yankees, and against the Rangers. That means they need to sweep one, and they need to win 2 of 3 of the other. Let's say, as I laid out, they win 2 of 3 against the Yankees, and they sweep the Rangers. That makes it possible. But the Astros can do no better than a 4-3 week against these two teams they're playing. They could get swept by the Padres. They could sweep the Angels. They could lose 2 of 3 to the Padres and 3 of 4 to the Angels. Like, all that's possible. If they sweep the Angels, that just leaves no room for error. Like, they just need to win one game against the Padres, and then the Astros know they physically cannot blow the division lead facing the Mariners, unless the Mariners go 6-0, which is most likely not happening.
So the Mariners really need the Padres to win 2 of those games in this series. Very badly.
At least.
Yeah.
That's your best chance.
Yeah, it is.
Otherwise, you're sitting there and you are clinging to the fact the Astros play at the Guardians the final week of the season. Like, the Guardians are a very good team. The Astros have been better. You don't want to rely on that. You can't rely on that, especially for how some of these end of season series have gone for the Mariners when they miss the playoffs by a game. It'll be, if the Mariners somehow do that again, Lyle, it'll be 5 times in 11 seasons they've missed the playoffs by a game entering the final day of the season, which I'm sorry I can't take anymore. I'm done. I can't do that again. We joke this year that they're actually going to tie the 3rd wild card, but they're going to not going to have the tiebreaker and therefore miss out. So let's hope that doesn't happen, because I don't think you or I can do it again. And you don't want to have to rely on other teams taking care of your business when you have the opportunity to do it for you.
No, you don't. And just to look at the pitching matchups in that Astros-Padres series, obviously this podcast will be out on Wednesday, so 2 games will have already been completed. But just for the sake of it, Yu Darvish is going for the Padres tonight against Spencer Arrighetti. Tuesday is Hunter Brown for the Astros, Michael King for the Padres. And Wednesday, unfortunately, is Framber for the Astros, and then Dylan Cease for the Padres. So, from a Mariners perspective, or from a Padres perspective, you've got your best arms going, but they're just going to have to step up their A game.
Hasn't mattered much for the Astros. They've continued to just mash.
Right. Actually, and I'm curious now as we think out loud here. Framber pitches Wednesday. Yeah, he's going to throw that first game against the Mariners. I just looked. So, You're going to have to face Framber Valdez in Houston. And you're going to have to beat them.
But they played pretty well against Framber. That hasn't been the issue.
They have, but down the stretch, I just always worry when you face very good arms like that.
Are they in high-pressure games in Houston against an offense that has just really just decimated pitchers for the last 3 months? Are they going to be able to suppress? Or here's the ultimate thing. Are the Crawford boxes going to get motherfucked in this series? Am I going to have to yell at the Crawford boxes?
Look, your strength is your pitching, and you're going to lean on them in that series. That's like, if your pitching can't hold up, you probably don't deserve to make the playoffs anyway, because that is the core backbone strength of your team, your starting pitching. If they falter in this Astros series, you probably just don't deserve to get in, because you need them to go and be great.
Yeah, you do. So, let's hope for a sweep of the Astros. We'll have a little bit more time to think about it next week when we record our next Wednesday episode. We'll be recording it before that Astros series starts. So, we'll have an idea, but it won't. We'll have to sort of figure it out as it gets to that point. Regardless, Mariners' margin for error is as slim as ever.
Yep, it's just the position they're in.
So they're gonna have to find some way to have other teams falter at the same time they get some wins in down the stretch.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a quick pause for a minute. We're going to talk to you guys about our friends over at Pagacci's Pub 85. Some of you are probably looking for a place to go and watch these final stretch of Mariners games. Why? Because it's getting pretty exciting. So head over there. There's 20 TVs in that place. So you can watch the Mariners, you can watch them NFL, you can watch them college football, whatever. You want to play darts? You want to play pool? That's there. You want to have some great food? That's there. And the drink specials. Yeah, the drink specials. 2 to 6 p.m. happy hour, Monday through Friday. Drinks are $3 and $4. So, all of that combined, you've got everything you need for a good night out with your friends. That is all over at Pagacci's Pub 85 in Kirkland.
So we had on Ben Ranieri. If you haven't checked it out, he does a Substack site and is the host of the Sea Level podcast. The page is called The Sea Level, where he talks quite a lot about the Mariners. We have So he's a Montana kid, which means in a positive way, Lyle, good friend of Ryan Divish, which is always a good connection to have. And we talk a little bit about this in this interview, chat a little bit about this current team as well. Ben brings a very, interesting perspective and is another different faction of what the Mariners content community has sort of grown to. He is a little bit similar to us. He went out on his own to create something out of scratch, and it has done very well. So recommend, if you aren't familiar with his stuff, you go check him out at the Sea Level. And you got to spend quite a bit of time with him this past weekend at the park.
Yeah, he was there with a bunch of his friends, and we were hanging out, and all three of us have gotten to now meet in person. When we did that about a month and a half ago.
Philly series.
Right. So caught up with him again. When we met during the Philly series, we had never all met in person before that because he's from Montana, but we're all about the same age, obviously have similar interests, talking Mariners for a while, and he's really fun to talk to, very smart. But yeah, like, one of the cool things about starting this is we've gotten to know a lot of other people that do Mariners content and have become friends with a lot of these people. And we haven't had a whole ton of them on yet besides Ty. Now we're going to have Ben on here too, who was great. And I'll say, it's kind of a cool way to balance, like, having him on was a cool way to balance TJ and I out a little bit. Because as you guys probably know, we can, me specifically, certainly come on here and be very animated, get very loud, get very, very, like, yell into the mic sort of mode. But Ben, not only is he just very smart and breaks things down in a very good way, but he's almost like he's a very relaxed voice. So when I say he balances us out, that's what I mean, where he does a good job of it. And I think he provides some really good stuff in this, and hopefully you guys really enjoy it. Oh, one more note. So Ben references, thinking about it as a player and thinking about it back when I played. So Ben played college baseball. Like, he played down at Linfield. So he's not just saying, I played in Little League. Like, no, he has real collegiate baseball experience, and he's trained at Driveline when he was playing in college. So he has a lot of the Driveline training and stuff too. So he brings like a very, very unique element, and we hope you guys enjoy the interview because we had a bunch of fun with it.
We won't keep you guys any longer. Let's get you to that interview with Ben Ranieri.
All right. We welcome our friend Ben Ranieri. He's the founder of Sea Level, host of the Sea Level podcast. He does some awesome stuff over there. We just caught up with him this past weekend, or I did, I should say. Ben, long time no see. Overall review of your weekend in Seattle. Give us your take.
It was first of all, thanks for having me. Second off, it was pretty awesome. I mean, I feel like it was kind of my ideal viewing experience watching baseball, honestly, because it was just bombs. It was just bombs and bat flips and pretty good pitching. And, like, the two games that I got to go to, I mean, what more can you ask for? Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer, and the two that I went to, Julio went upper deck and both. Victor Robles was amazing in both games. They were exciting games. It was some of my favorite games actually that I've watched there in a really long time, which is surprising considering how frustrating this team has been as an overall viewing experience.
So we're big numbers guys, and we like clarity. We like facts. The fact is you're undefeated this year, aren't you?
Yeah.
Go in person.
I sure am.
So, what or no? You have to have a spot on the team plane at this point.
Yeah, I think I could maybe offer some late inning defensive value. Other than that, I don't think I'm going to be bringing a tremendous amount. But 4-0. I think I'm probably they have to be averaging 5 runs a game, because I was at the Phillies game where Justin Turner at the grand slam. That one, I think they scored 11 runs in that game. Pretty good offensive nights this last weekend. So yeah, I don't know. It's something about it this year.
So we'll dive into all that in just a second. But for those of you listening or watching who don't know who you are or haven't seen your work before, you want to give people just kind of the groundwork of how you decided you wanted to start doing Mariners content, how you got into doing a Substack page and a Substack podcast, and what you've enjoyed about it so far?
Yeah. So I guess I started out my Mariners, fandom kind of started out way back in, so my family's Yankees fans. I have a lot of Yankees and Braves fans in my family, so don't ask me why I chose this path. But I'm from Boise, Idaho, so like the team of that you can watch locally there is the Bears, and I kind of just fell in love with watching Felix, and I kind of started into I was watching them. I loosely followed them for a long time, but I really started watching once every fifth day for sure when Felix was on the mound, and then since then it's grown and grown and grown, and since I've gotten older and been able to, I guess, appreciate baseball in a different way, it's grown into like wanting to have a voice about it. So that started at Soto Mojo back in the day. I guess that was like 2020, 2021. And I actually got an opportunity to interview Julio like right before he made his debut. And that was like kind of how I like got my first like kind of step and taste into this world. And then ever since then, I got an opportunity to write with SI, with Ty and Colby and those guys. And I've had a chance to be on their show a lot. And then some things at Sports Illustrated kind of went downhill. And so then from there, I just I wanted to keep having a voice in it any way that I kind of could, even if it was small. And it's grown way more than I could have possibly imagined. And it's fun. It's super fun. It's fun to have people who listen, similar to you guys, I'm sure, that like, send in questions and like want your opinions on it. And it's just it's a good time having a voice about something that I would just want to talk about with friends. So it's been a really, really fun experience so far.
And it, I guess, feels a lot more rewarding. I know I can speak for Lyle in this aspect because we've talked about this quite a lot. But when you start something from nothing, like literally starting your own, like you were a single owner operator of the Sea Level. We're dual owner operators of the Marine Layer podcast. So like it almost feels like when you have to build up your own branding without anything supporting you up around you, it needs to all start from zero. I guess just feels, it feels that much more. So I would say in this, what did you feel like was the biggest thing you learned when you were trying to figure out like what worked and what didn't?
The biggest thing that I learned, I would say, is like you got to make connections. Like the more you show that you can talk to people who like have a voice already, that helps a ton. Like, I tell him this all the time, even though he's, a grizzly bear on Twitter. Ryan Divish has been a big part of this for me. Larry Stone, like I wouldn't have been able to get this many people to listen to what I do if it wasn't for those guys. They just, were very welcoming to me, like starting back in spring training of 2021 or 2022, whenever that was. And I've just been super, and it doesn't stop with those guys. Like there's so many, Ty and Colby for sure as well. Just like, making genuine friends in the industry has been probably the biggest thing, and just making connections with people that, actually care about what you have to say about baseball, I think is probably the biggest thing that I've learned.
I'd say we're right along that same boat. It's such a who field, sports media, and that can be true in life, but I feel like sports media plays a big factor into it. And I promise we're going to get to some Mariners here for everybody listening in just a minute. But while we're on the topic, and while you mentioned Divish, for any of you who don't know or don't follow Ben on Twitter or don't see some of their interactions or haven't listened to his podcast yet, Ben and Ryan Divish are friends, and Divish has helped Ben a lot. He also has gotten to know Ryan Divish pretty well. So do you have a favorite story of his that you want to share?
Favorite Divish?
I'll kind of get the ball rolling. I'll throw one out.
I actually do.
Okay, from what we talked about this weekend, about how we either told it on a vlog or on this podcast, how Divish was telling us in spring training how former Oregon State basketball coach Wayne Tinkle once chucked him to the ground as he was trying to fake him and go up for a layup and pick up basketball, and he dropped an F-bomb on him and is like just flexing on him. I was dying when I heard that story. But anyway.
So I think like the way that, I don't know, we both think about the game pretty similarly, I think. And so like we talk about it from, like when we talk about it a lot of times it's like from a coaching perspective almost. And so my favorite thing, he has his girlfriend's son, Tyson, plays for Haver. I coach in Missoula. And so I got to meet Tyson, who's a big kid and I think going to be a good player. I met him down at spring training. And he will send me, my favorite is when he sends me videos of like Tyson's swing and stuff like that. But the best ones are the ones where he's gotten clipped a couple times. So he got clipped in the elbow, and I believe shattered a piece of his elbow off. So he sent me a couple videos he got hit in the hip. He got hit several times in those Haver cages, and so that is probably those are probably my favorite, because it is, as painful as it is, it's happened to me as well, but he has them documented on video, and as you can probably imagine, his reactions are pretty funny. So that's probably my favorite.
So his favorite stories are not, hey, look at this kid I'm coaching, look at him rip a double into the gap. It's, hey, look at him getting hit by a pitch. Let's laugh.
Yes, exactly. It's pretty good. It's like him, front tossing, and then he can't hang out of that net at all. Otherwise, you're exposing some limbs. And Tyson, I think, has gotten bigger, and as Tyson's gotten bigger and stronger, he's clipped him a couple times and hurt him pretty bad. So
let's get into a little bit about this Mariners team, and we could jump all over the place. There's been so much recently that I think is really fascinating that I want to get your take on. So let's just start off with the overall offensive performance, which has been really good, like league best for the last couple of weeks. Overall, since Edgar Martinez has been hired as the temporary hitting coach, it has been very good. Do you take any what's the rate of significance that it's like? Is it Edgar fixing the offense? Do you think it's just the offense coming around? How do you sort of look at this situation and who's influencing what?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is I think about this from just like a player perspective. If we struggled, let's say that we were an offense and we struggled all year the way that they've struggled, your best players have struggled, your theoretical worst players have struggled really bad too. Nobody's been outstanding for the majority of the season, and I think they're human beings too, and they see stuff. So they're gonna see when there's all these stats coming across about how this is one of the worst offenses of all time, and I think that combined with maybe some messaging that the players just didn't quite. It doesn't mean that the coaches were necessarily bad. It's just maybe that wasn't the right coaching staff for those players. And maybe the messaging was just a little complex for him for a while. So I don't know if Edgar is the main reason why everything's turned around. I think that's, I think there's probably a part of it. I think for this group and what they've been through a lot, obviously. I mean, they've been through several coach firings. What they probably needed was to just, and sometimes you just need to do it in baseball, is just to get back to the ground level and just simplify things. Because, I mean, when you look at the lineup, they have a lack of overall talent, I would say, but they don't lack for talented players. They have Julio and Randy Rosarena and Cal Raleigh and JP Crawford, guys that have done this before, and they just, I think, needed to get back to just simplicity. And I think that's kind of what we've seen. And I don't know if he's necessarily the guy long term, but for this year, in a year where they've been through so much and how mentally taxing that can be, I think just keeping it simple, I think, has probably lifted a big weight off of their shoulders in terms of what they have to digest on a day-to-day basis, and probably a lot of the pressure that they were feeling. So that's kind of what I see. It feels, even being there this week, I was thinking about this, it just felt like they weren't pressing so hard. That they felt like they were just pressing and pressing and pressing from the May to July. It didn't really feel like that, even though they're in theoretically the most important games of their season. It just kind of felt like they could come back. They went down in both of those games, and it didn't feel like they were cooked. So that's kind of how I see it right now.
The way you think about it, what do you mean by simple?
I think it's just like the way that stuff is packaged and delivered to the players. So like whatever the game planning was, and I think it's been fairly evident in like what some of the players have said, is just that they just struggled to grasp whatever it was that was being taught to them. And I think like it's probably easier for them right now in a season that, you know, has been so probably mentally taxing for a lot of them to just get back to like, you know, maybe some of the way they played the game growing up. Just like, hey, you know, just try to put it in play with 2 strikes, or like lay down a bunt, or like, you know, just, you don't have to be the hero that hits the 8-run home run. Like, just hit a sac fly, which I know is all easier said than done, but it just, I think, alleviates some of the like, and I don't know, I'm not there, I don't know what their game planning looked like before, but it seems from the just like general viewing perspective and just like what we've heard the players say, that like this is just giving them a big weight off their shoulders to just like think simplistically about a game that they've been playing for a long time, and they're probably hearing some similar things to like, you know, what they heard when they were younger. Like I don't know, I think it's just keeping it simple, and I think Dan Wilson said as much. Like, Edgar's not trying to reinvent the wheel here. He's got a good cachet. Obviously, he's a Hall of Fame hitter, and so guys listen to that, and guys believe in that. So that's kind of what I think has gone on.
If there's any time for these guys to not be pressing and to be playing relaxed, it's now, when the games are most important, because that's when you want them not cracking under pressure. And so far, they've lived up to the challenge of that. We'll see what the final 12 games look like, but they've really done that so far. So on that note, while we're talking about the hitters, with so many of these guys starting to turn things around, aside from Julio, because he'd be the obvious answer, which guy currently really hitting offensively do you think has been the most important to the team's success?
Oof. I mean, I think it has to be Victor Robles. I think it has to be. Like, I mean, I think that the turnaround for this team has, I mean, pretty much and I mean, you could make an argument for several different players, but it's got to be Robles or Raley, in my opinion. Like, those guys have, and Robles, I think it's from more of a perspective than anybody else too, because he just is so infectious. Like, his energy is so infectious, and like just watching him, I mean, I sat in the Saturday game, I sat down the right field line. And I didn't know that he was going to be playing right field. I got those tickets a long time ago, but like, it was incredibly entertaining. Like, he's incredibly entertaining. He's having so much fun. And he's setting the table for all of this. Like, he's still a third twice in that game. And he's 25 for 25 on the bases. Like, he has extra base hit ability right now. He's doing it in a lot of different ways that is also, like, what we don't think about is that he's putting pressure on the defense in a lot of different ways too. Like, he's stealing bags. He will bunt with 2 outs. Like, you just never know what he's going to do. And I think it's been incredibly, in fact, he's a good defender. Like, he's impacting the game in so many different ways, and it's got to be him. But it's honorable mention has to be Luke Raley as well. I think they're like the number 1 and 2. I don't know if you guys saw that stat, but it's like the number 1 and 2 hitters in baseball since, is it August 1st? It's something unbelievable like that.
Yeah, it's the last 30 days. Our buddy Peter Apple, who co-founded Just Baseball, tweeted that out today, and I was like, I didn't know that. I mean, I knew both those guys were hitting, but I didn't realize that Victor Robles had been the best bat in baseball over the last month's time. That's for sure. Like, to your point, now that we're sitting here talking about it and just getting the conversation going about how infectious the personality of Victor Robles is and how he's so quickly won over the fan base, clearly won over his teammates, does it almost feel like he's taken some of that role that Gino no longer fills with him being in Arizona? Like, in terms of like the vibes thing, right? People miss Gino. That's never going to change. He was loved here for a reason in his 2 years. But it does kind of feel like he's taken some of that on all of a sudden, where he's kind of the good vibes guy.
Yeah, I think that's 100% fair. And you need guys like that sometimes, especially like, I don't think people realize how long and grueling the season is. And when they started playing really well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure when they started playing really well last year, it was because Scott like basically challenged Gino, like, you need to bring more energy. Like that is part of your role on this team. And I don't think that they've had to tell Victor Robles to do that. I think he's just having a genuine blast. Like, I tweeted out a video I know of like he has a ball, and it's more than just like the on-field stuff. Like, he has a ball sitting out in right field every inning that he's, taking to a kid, or like he brought his bat out to a kid in the stands after the game. Like, he's just, I think, in such a happy place. Mm-hmm. And like, this is a guy who was, he was ranked higher than Juan Soto at one point in their farm system. Like, he's not talentless, and he wasn't ever talentless, but I think in listening to interviews with him and stuff, I think he lost the joy for the game that he's found again. And I think that is definitely infectious on other players, 100%. And I think you're seeing it right now with the Mariners outfield. Like, they're having a lot of fun.
I'll tell one quick little story here, and then I'll throw it back to TJ. But just to that point, to tie it all in, because like you said, like the fact he's like climbing the wall mid-inning and all this stuff to sign bats or balls, it's pretty cool. But just to the point I was going to bring it back to is when Gino was here almost every day, just to give people a little bit of a peek behind the curtains, when he would come up the steps from the clubhouse and onto the field, this would usually happen while Scott Service was doing his media session too. He'd just come out, he'd run right up the stairs, and he'd just scream. He'd go, "Stop it!" Like, which is, for those who don't know, it's the old Perry Hill like mantra. He says it all the time to all the infielders, whoever. And Victor Robles doesn't yell "stop it," but when he runs up the stairs these days, more often than not, he will run up the stairs and just scream. So it kind of, again, to this whole Gino point, it kind of all ties in. So yeah.
100%. 100%. He is so much fun.
I would say with a lot of this Robles stuff too, not only, like, the Mariners love his production. I don't know where they would be without his bat. Just thinking of sort of I don't think the Mariners thought Mitch Haniger was going to come in and light the world on fire as a right-handed hitting outfielder, but they needed somebody else right-handed in the outfield to produce besides Julio. And Victor Robles has picked up all that slack. But it's not even the offensive production. Julio's the guy with the smile on his face all the time, most of the time, because he's, normally playing pretty well, and he's the star of the city, and all the attention is on him. But when he's struggling this year, that energy doesn't quite feel the same, and someone else needed to step into that role. Like, someone else really did. Like, leadership, yes, it is fantastic, but more just like energy, and it's like, guys, smile a little bit. Like, we're playing a game here.
Yeah.
So I that's sort of how I feel like with Victor Robles. But how about like Julio himself? Like, this stretch he's going on down the final month of the season is very important. I don't think this saves his season, Ben, but I think it gives him, like, he could learn a lesson from what happened this season, and he can sort of take notes on how he has dealt with this adversity. If there's something else besides from what I said, do you feel like there is a lesson he's sort of learned from the season now that he's turned it around a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly, like, I mean, I know this, and anybody who's like played the game at least for a long time knows this, is like, the more situations and funks that you run into, the more hopefully you start to like figure out, especially if you're super talented, you start to figure out, which I was not, but like, you start to figure out how do you get yourself out of these things? Like, when this happens again, like, hopefully it starts to not become these things where like it's a month-long thing. It's like, oh, like, this happened to me before. I know how to fix it. And I think that can be a big thing for him moving forward. And I think a lot of it's just like, there was a physical aspect to his struggles for sure. Like, I think he just had a little bit of like an issue with his load and kind of the way, obviously, like, he wasn't pulling the ball in the air. Like, that's been very well documented. We all know that. And he's doing that now. And it's just setting himself up for success. And a big part of that is like, he needs to remember that he's Julio Rodriguez and get some confidence back. And I mean, if you were at the games this weekend, it very much felt like that's starting to happen consistently for the first time, which is, it's huge. He He came through in big moments. I mean, that bat flip was like, I mean, I had time to literally watch this ball go into the second deck and then look back and see like the second half of the descent of the bat. Like, it's just like, it's confidence, and I think that's going to be big for him going into the offseason, to like remember who he is and like how good he is at this game. But he's just been so fun to watch recently, and I hope he finishes the season on a tear regardless of where the team ends up.
We can all hope, and if he continues to hit like this, you never know where this offense can go. There's 12 games left, but if he has a ridiculous 12 games, we'll see. So I'll ask this question because TJ wanted to tie it all in with a mailbag question we got a few days ago, but we'll turn it to you because we want to get some different people's perspective on this. Somebody asked, of a couple of the pitchers, who would you pick to extend if you could pick somebody? But we'll throw in another guy with you. And it's the main three you're probably thinking of. If you could give out one extension right now, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Cal Raleigh, who would it be?
That's tough. So I think it's tough because, like, from just a pure baseball perspective, it's probably Logan, I think, just because I think there's a chance that they're just running Cal into the ground. But like, who would I extend? It would still probably be Cal. Like, I think they do a good enough job finding pitching that they can find pitching, and they have pitching coming. I don't know if you can really replace Cal. Like, I don't know if you can do that. Like, he is incredibly meaningful to this pitching staff as well. Like, that's the part that gets lost on people, is like, he's calling these games, and he's really good at the preparation part of it with these guys. I just think that he's, as much as people love him, I just think he's very underappreciated, even for like what he does. Like, I don't think people realize how banged up he is right now and like what he's gone through for this team. To be like, I know he's not a consistent hitter, but he's been their most consistent producer all year. As a catcher who is like, he's unbelievable. I would probably just extend Cal out of that group, and it's probably just mostly because of the fact that I think they can replace some of that stuff because they're so good at developing pitching. From a pure baseball perspective, only like no vibes in it, it's probably Logan. Just because, I mean, we've seen the track record of health. We've seen him get better year by year. He's got a ton of different weapons. And I think he likes being here as well. But I think Cal, out of the three, actually, Cal is the most likely to get extended. That would be my guess. But yeah, we'll see. I would probably go with Cal at the end of the day. I know there was a roundabout answer, but
let me put one quick perspective on that before I just throw it back to TJ here. To your point about saying you actually think Cal's the most likely of the three, I'm sure there's people listening right now that are going to say, Boris guy, it's not happening.
Yeah.
We can't promise anything's going to happen, but to your point, Ben, I'll say this. Number one, I genuinely think Cal wants to be here, and I think if he was offered something fair, a fair deal for what he's worth, he would take it. And number two, Matt Chapman just signed an extension before free agency as a Boris guy. So for anybody out there hoping it happens with Cal, it is not impossible for a Scott Boras client to sign an extension before he hits free agency. So I will just throw that out there for people thinking about it.
Yeah, I think we've heard he just wants something fair. And I think he's said as much. Like, he said in February, like, I had a tweet about this a while ago, like, they should extend Cal. It was like pretty bare bones tweet, and I had a bunch of people in the replies like, Boris. And I was like, you don't just like make these statements for fun. Like, I think he actually wants to be here, and he said it flat out in February in spring training. Like, he would want to be in Seattle. So
here's how I think about this. I think, so Cal says he wants a fair market deal, which is fine, but Cal also realizes probably the wear and tear and the future value of his position. Like, is Cal going to be a first baseman maybe. Most of his value goes out the window if he's a first baseman. So, like, if there's an opportunity to make money as a catcher, he's going to want to take that opportunity. And I think an extension is the best way to get that money. Because, like, where is Cal Raleigh when he hits free agency? How's his body look? Especially if the Mariners keep playing him the way they're going to play him.
Well,
right? I think part of it is Cal looking out for himself.
Yeah, see, to me, it's like if you extend him, you also need to, like, whatever this looks like. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's Harry Ford or what that looks like. But you need to, like, if you're going to invest in him, you need to, like, protect that investment a little bit, and, like, get somebody that can be back there with him. And maybe it is Harry Ford. Maybe it's, I mean, it's hard to say that it's Mitch Garver at this point, but, like, you got to find whoever that person is to lighten the load on him a little bit, because you're right, like, he's gonna start falling apart a little bit at some point. Like, you can't just do that forever. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Like, from a baseball, and also from, like, a baseball sense, as a true, like, all-around baseball player, I think Cal is the best of those three. Like, I know Logan and George have the numbers on the paper, which is what this podcast goes by most of the times, but you accounted, like, everything Cal does to make this team better, like, I feel like that makes him a better all-around baseball player than those other two. But Logan's the first hit free agency. So I think, like, you're going to get George for an extra year no matter what. So that almost has to become, like, your second option. So that's what I feel like the priority is. I just feel kind of bad for Cal. I just feel like he's in a tough spot. He's in a tough situation with all this. It almost is like, especially with catchers, like, they don't have much leverage in these negotiations.
No.
Because the team's just going to be like, well, you know, we know you're going to get hurt anyway, so we can't guarantee you all this money.
Yeah, the other part of it is, too, like, I don't know how well the extensions have gone that have been or could be considered, like, comparable. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure that JT Realmuto, like, his defensive stuff, I think, is pretty bad. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think it's pretty bad right now. Sean Murphy's been dinged up this year. He just got extended. That would probably be a pretty good comp. Him or, like, Will Smith. Yeah, who's awesome. Like, there's some awesome catchers around the league. But
he got a big deal.
He got a big one. Big one. But yeah, there's just so much to his game that I think is important. And if you were going to do it, though, my one thing would be, like, it's kind of counterintuitive a little bit, especially for an organization that doesn't spend money. But, like, you need to protect that investment somehow. And that's why, like, you know, if Tom Murphy could have just been healthy, he's perfect. Like, they were the perfect tandem. But, like, they had to go in a different direction because he couldn't stay on the field, and he didn't stay on the field this year, unfortunately. But yeah, it's Cal, 100%.
My last question, Ben, and it's almost a two-parter. So another mailbag question we were asked was, what position do we think is most likely to bounce back? So I'm going to make this as two parts for you. Which position for the Mariners next year do you feel like is most likely to bounce back, and which one would you feel least confident in, therefore the Mariners need to go upgrade at?
I mean, it's kind of an easy answer, but the one that's the most likely to bounce back, in my opinion, is center field. Like, he's still really good. And, like, I try to think about this as often as I can, but he's done a lot of things in his first 2 years. And I understand, like, some of the caveats that, like, he hasn't been super consistent, or, like, there's been a lot of months where he hasn't been super good, but, like, he's done a lot of things that, like, no one else has done ever. Like, and he's shouldered a load on a pretty aggressively mediocre offensive club for his first 3 years in the big leagues. Like, I feel pretty confident that he's gonna, I don't know what it's gonna look like, but I feel pretty confident that he's gonna come back next year with the OPS above 800, and he's gonna look like Julio again. So that's the position that's gonna bounce back, in my opinion. I don't really think that there's one out there that stands out any more than that. And then the position that I feel like they need to upgrade, that I don't feel like is going to bounce back, is, like, it's got to be first base. Like, I don't know. The whole infield is kind of a disaster, honestly. Like, it is. I mean, it's like, I feel okay about JP Crawford moving forward. Like, he might just be a 100 WRC plus, like, solid bottom of the order type of a bat, or he might be able to get it up somewhere in between what he's been or what he was in 2023. But I mean, I don't really think Luke Raley looks comfortable playing first base at all. And I think it's more likely that he's a platoon option with Robles. Now, maybe that could change, and maybe first base ends up being less of a priority because Luke Raley can just spend more time there. But, I mean, they have sorely needed offense from that position, and third base for that matter, for the last 2 years. And it just hasn't been there. They've got nothing. And I guess Raley, you can kind of say he's played a lot there recently. But they need to go out and get a first baseman. Like, I don't feel comfortable handing that job to Tyler Locklear. Nothing really against Tyler Locklear. That's a lot to put on a guy, especially when that's a position where you need offensive production, and they haven't gotten it from their corner spots in a while now. And it's just not going to be good. Like, that's a big part of the reason why they've been so mediocre, is that they haven't had like traditional offensive production at positions where you need it. So yeah, first base I think stands out because I just don't really think there is a guy to bounce back there. First of all, like, I don't think they're bringing Justin Turner back. I don't think the plan is Luke Raley, even though he's been awesome this year. Like, he's been everything you could have asked for out of him. So if that's the plan, maybe my answer would change, but it's got to be first base, in my opinion. You just need more offense from that spot.
Yeah, paired with everything that's going to be out on the market first base-wise too this winter, both free agency and trade, seems like the logical fit. So I'm with you on that, 100%. Yeah. Ben, this has been awesome, dude. Thanks so much for hopping on with us. We're all really, really glad that this whole Mariners content community thing has allowed all of us to become friends, and a lot of other people in that matter too, in that regard too. It was awesome catching up with you here. It was awesome catching up with you this weekend at the park. For anybody that's not checking out Ben's stuff yet over at Sea Level, go do that. And we'll have to do this again. This was really fun.
Absolutely. I'm going to have I need you guys to be on my show pretty soon as well. So, love talking ball.
Hope you guys enjoyed the interview with Ben. We really had a blast talking to him. Again, one final time, you want to check out his stuff. That's over at the Sea Level, and he does the Sea Level podcast as well. That'll just about wrap up this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. You guys know the drill. You want to listen to the full form podcast, you can do so wherever you get your audio pods. Make sure to download, make sure to rate and review, 5 stars. It really does us a favor. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, especially hit that subscribe button. And then follow us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.